Hi guys, Nick Watts here from We Love Betting. On my own this week, as it's just been too difficult to get together. Hectic times in the We Love Betting world. We couldn't go with a week without some tips though, so I've looked up 3 bets from the Premier League, and hopefully they'll prove a bit of value this weekend. Just a 1 out of 3 last weekend after a late goal for Wigan robbed me of an under 2.5 goals, and of course. Stoke holding out against Chelsea, very brave performance of course, still maintain that record of not really scoring goals away from home, but ultimately you have to give them credit for holding Chelsea just to the 1 goal and for so long of course. So bit of a disappointing one. Let's hope that I can get 3 out of 3 this week. First up, looking at my notes just behind the screen here, I've got Everton v Southampton, and Everton immediately looked extraordinarily short to me when I looked at the prices. What I've scribbled down in front of me is 2 to 5, but I'm pretty sure they're shortened that in places. Absolutely crazy price at home to Southampton, a Southampton side who got their first win against Villa last week in somewhat impressive fashion, coming from a goal down. And of course, won again in the Capital One Cup midweek. So a side that's really finding its feet now, and one that I did actually give a bit of credit to last week, and thought that they could well come good, but certainly thought there'd be goals in that one, and that proved right. I'm expecting the same thing again here. I mean, just looking at, I'm just kind of looking for a way to be with Southampton, and I do think goals are the way forward with them, really. The sort of 8 to 1 around, I'd be tempted to actually have a bit of a punt on them, really. And certainly there's plenty of ways for me to think that you can get with them in the handicaps. I think you can get about 8 to 13 for them, plus 2 goals, which I think is extraordinary, really. When you consider that Everton struggled a little bit against the lesser sides, or the smaller sides, I should say, at Goodison Park last season. Obviously, they've started this season in fantastic form, but let punters down in the week in the Capital One Cup. And I just don't think they're a reliable proposition at the sort of prices they're being quoted at. The 4 to 9s, 2 to 5s. Just don't see the value in backing them at that sort of price, form or no form, unfortunately. Just flicking back to my notes here, I can see that Southampton are 4 to 5. Just to score a goal at Goodison Park, and that's extraordinary when you consider they scored 2 against each of the Manchester clubs. They scored at Arsenal, even in that heavy defeat. They still managed to get on the score sheet, and the only game they haven't scored in, of course, in League and Cup was at home to Wigan, which they hit the bar twice and could easily have registered in that game. They're a strong attacking force, best attack in the Championship last year, of course. I think they scored quite a few goals away from home as well. They only failed to score, looking again at the notes there, in 5 of their 23 away games last year. So, I really think they're a side that's set up to go and attack. They're not great defensively. I think Nigel Atkins knows that, and he plays to their strength. So 4 to 5 of them to get on the score sheet looks a cracking bet to me. Next up then, I've got Fulham v Man City, and it's more goals on the agenda, if I'm to be believed. Fulham let me down, as I said, conceding that goal against Wigan last week, and that disappointed me then, but it continued this strange record for Fulham, really, and 100% of their games now have gone over 2.5 goals, and some of the times, at Craven Cottage they've been winning to 0, so they obviously scored 3 and 5 in their 2 home games there so far. 8 goals in 2 home games, pretty impressive stuff. They've also conceded 7 in their 3 away games, and while they're at Craven Cottage here, you always think, against a bigger side, that shows there's a certain vulnerability about them. Whether they're going to be able to dig in and keep a clean sheet against City, I don't know. City's defensive woes are obviously somewhat well documented now, yet to keep a clean sheet. 7 goals conceded so far this season. That makes for them to have the 12th best defence, and when you consider it was the best defence in the league last year, and very un-Mancini-like to have a team conceding so many goals. So I think it could happen again here. Interesting, looking at their head-to-head record, both teams have scored in this fixture in 15 of the last 16 times they met. The only time they didn't both score was a 3-0 win for City at the Etihad Stadium towards the tail end of last season. And 13 of those 16 meetings that I mentioned there went over 2.5 goals. Over 2.5 at 5-6 again this weekend. I also think you could actually consider Fulham +1 when you consider City yet to win away from home this year in their 2 away trips. So, but it's the goals that I'm going to call my banker, if you like. 5-6 for over 2.5 goals. Third and final then, let's rattle through this one quickly. Stoke v Swansea. It's all pretty obvious, really. Stoke, we all know that they're good at home. Whenever they're hovering around that even money mark against an equal or lesser opponent, you always think, I quite fancy them to get the job done. Swansea had their bubble burst, really, haven't they, with those 2 defeats to 0 by Aston Villa and then Everton. Comprehensive defeats, really, and talk of unrest in their dressing room. Players complaining about others showboating or wanting to do things by themselves, and you get the feeling they're not the unit that they were last year. They had that amazing start, but the goals have obviously dried up in the last 2 games. Stoke pretty decent defensively, and I can see them keeping a clean sheet here. I think that the safer play is just to straight up back Stoke here. They're hovering around even money, about 10 to 11 as I look at things now on Thursday night. I think that's a price worth taking. They performed well against these kind of mid-table teams last season. They won 4 of 5 against the teams between 8th and 12th, of which Swansea was one of them. They won 2-0 in this fixture last year. And I just feel that at that sort of 10 to 11 mark, Stoke, decent value. So in reverse order then, my 3 bets for this weekend. Stoke, 10 to 11 to beat Swansea. I've got over 2.5 goals in Fulham Man City at 5-6. And just finally then, Everton v Southampton. Southampton just to get on the score sheet at 4-5. Good luck this weekend.